One of these days, I'm gonna be like Michael Jordan.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think
Let's do this.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think
Someone's getting better.
Winning has a price.
They have got to be the #1 sports team in the world.
No matter what we did, it seemed like it was a story.
The most famous man on the planet is here.
Michael Jordan changed the culture.
The Nerd Frenzy Podcast.
Hey, how's it going, my friends? This is Nick from the Nerd Frenzy Podcast. And today we have the Slim, the Trim, not the Tim, the Tasen. How's it going, my friend?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm very good, very good. So, everyone, if you do not know, this is my wonderful nephew, Tasen, and he is easily my biggest supporter of this. And we've been having communication for the whole time on goods and bads that I should try and not try, and run it by him with a lot of things. And he's always been my go-to man. And I've been trying to find a good topic to talk about with him because Taysen's a very big sports guy and I'm not. But I watched The Last Dance, and it might be my favorite documentary of all time. So Taysen, I had to do this with you, my friend.
Yes, it was amazing a documentary. I loved it.
First of all, I actually grew up. I am 36, born 1984, and I believe 1984 is actually when Michael Jordan started on the Bulls.
Yeah.
It was 1984 to 1998, I believe, and so pretty much I got to experience growing up with, my opinion, the best basketball player of all time. And I got to see him win all of his championships. And so when I heard about this documentary, I heard about it late, in fact. I didn't even hear anything about it until about 3 months ago. And so I checked it out, and amazing.
It was insane, yeah. Yeah, you told us about it when you were doing our route, and it was, we watched it that night, and it was perfect. We watched one episode every day or something like that.
I was, and I don't typically binge watch TV shows anymore because of the family,
Hmm.
but I destroyed the whole thing in, I think it was 3 days, which is
Yeah, there's like 10
crazy.
episodes, and it's like in 48 minutes or something.
And you're thinking, okay, well, how about you just tell me this whole thing in 48 minutes? Because I think that should be
Yeah.
plenty. But the way that this whole documentary is filmed, it's genius. First of all, I guess they decided a long time ago, the last year of Michael Jordan's career with the Bulls, to film the whole thing. And they thought that they were never going to use it. I guess it was not really the way it was put out back in the 90s and such. It was kind of cheesy. So they're like, no, we're not going to try it. But then you see all this footage that they put in now, and then you add some of the geniuses behind what makes our movies to this day, and you see what amazing filmmaking looks like.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
And of course, we all know how amazing Michael Jordan is, but when you hear all these people's stories playing next to him or against him, there is no doubt that most people thought that Michael Jordan wasn't even a human being. He was too amazing for that. And these were other
Yeah.
basketball players saying that.
Yeah, he was the, like, for the 2 decades, that was him. That was all him.
Would you say, because there's a big old talk, there's a few names that's been thrown in there. You get Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, some of the older people, Wilt Chamberlain, but then you get a little bit newer and you go to
LeBron.
LeBron James, Kobe Bryant. What's the guy who's kind of short but he shoots? He's probably the best shooter in the world.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, Stephen Murray.
Yeah.
He is pound for pound, maybe the best shooter that they've ever experienced. Maybe Larry Bird, but all these people. I mean, you might not get LeBron James because he's stubborn, I guess. But
Yeah,
all
I
these
don't think
other
he's like that.
people are pretty much saying, no, Michael Jordan is the man. And when you watch the documentary, it kind of shows Michael Jordan's kind of a prick,
Yep.
but this whole idea of him being like that is what fuels him to be the best basketball player. He always would get his feelings hurt, and he would always
Yeah, that was
take it
I like that
personal.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of funny watching it. It's just like, uh,
And he would always you'd hear him talk, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, this guy." Whenever he was going against you, let's say Reggie Miller, and then Michael Jordan would be like, "Man, Reggie Miller pissed me off."
yeah,
And
that was really
and then
funny.
and then he was, you could tell he still was kind of like upset about a lot of these things, and it just kind of because when you hear about this and you hear that he's kind of like this, and then all of a sudden you see it, you're like, okay, I used to think that you were a prick just by how you kind of advertise yourself, but when you watch this whole thing, you realize that he was so intense on this sport that he didn't know how else to act.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah, his lifestyle was basketball, basketball, and basketball. It was a good life though. That would be a fun life.
Sadly, though, it seems like the way that he lived it, it did cause consequences.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the players will say, no, Michael Jordan's an asshole. They'll say, no,
Yeah.
he's the man, he's the best teammate in the world. But the reason why he's the best teammate is because he was that guy who, when we were all kind of just messing around practice, he would get mad at us, say, hey, you know what, get your ass back in practice, get serious because we need to beat this next team. And they're all looking at him like, okay, man. And then
Yeah,
after,
watching that, yeah, it was funny, yeah. I liked it a lot.
and there's times whenever you're looking at him just going, man, you are intense. But then when you think about the big picture, all these, larger than life people are probably intense like that too. I mean, they probably have to be because there's a certain sacrifice that comes with being the best. And Michael Jordan's a prime example. He was kind of, not that he was odd socially, because he was obviously he could turn it on and off for the fans and stuff, but it was all about basketball. And if you want to talk about something else, unless it was basketball or gambling, he didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah, on the plane he would be smoking 30 cigars, playing blackjack, whatever he wanted, gambling. Yeah, and then he had those guys in the back that would gamble like $5, and he would be gambling like 5,000. It was insane.
Oh yeah, but and no matter what, like you see him playing, it didn't matter if it was for $1 or for $100,000. He could not stop doing that, and you
Seriously though.
and you see this man who has this addiction, and I'm thinking it has something to do with just the fact that he is so competitive with everything. It's just he can't help it. He's like, no, I want to beat you, and if you do beat me, he's kind of like Jesse, my brother, where I'll
Yeah.
beat him in something, and he'll go out and he'll learn that craft, and until he
Oh,
does beat me, and
it's, yeah.
and it's kind of obnoxious, but then when you really think about the big picture, it's not. I'm the obnoxious person for thinking that. You're the guy that is bettering yourself. I mean, yeah, maybe it's not for the right reasons. Maybe it's just because Jesse and I have a very good, I guess, competitive nature where we were always competitive in a good way, and it caused us to be better athletes and just better in general. But
Yeah.
it is one of the things. Michael Jordan, throughout the whole thing, all these people were just pretty much saying is like, oh man, Michael Jordan, he would do basketball, he would go home, he'd come back, he'd do basketball, and
Yeah.
if he was not liking what he was doing, he would stay there after everyone left and just keep on doing. And a lot of times he would actually say, "All right, you guys are staying here too," and they're all looking at him like, "Well, no, we're not, but you're Michael Jordan, so we
Yeah.
better."
Yeah. Yeah.
But like those times when you hear about like how Steve Kerr got punched in the face by Michael just because Michael was frustrated, you're thinking, no, this guy is, whenever he's not on it, everyone
Yeah.
they need to stay out of their way. But he also was Michael Jordan, where most time you would say in any sport, it's a team sport, and yeah, there are players that are awesome. You know, you have those Tom Brady's and stuff like that, but Tom Brady's not Tom Brady without Gronkowski possibly. But and so there's a lot of people. I don't think I ever heard about like Dennis Rodman ever getting messed with by Michael Jordan, and I think we all know that's because
Yeah.
Dennis Rodman doesn't mess
That's
around.
Dennis Rodman, yeah.
I remember watching a movie back in 1995 with Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dennis Rodman. It was called, was it Double Team? I think it was called, or Double Team.
Oh, I haven't heard about it.
And it's really bad, but when you're a kid, it's not. If you watch it now, you'd be like, Nick, you're an idiot for even saying it was bad, or maybe you won't. But Dennis Rodman is portrayed as this agent with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and there's a part whenever he saves a baby, and he's just all going like Gucci Goo baby, and I remember thinking, no, don't give me that Gucci Goo stuff. I've seen
Yeah,
you on
it's
the
kinda
courts, and you're a jerk.
You're evil.
But
Yeah.
it was always for the right team, though. I mean, you're thinking like, okay, well, if you're going to be protecting Michael Jordan, then I guess you can be a jerk, and that's weird how we do that with sports teams. We're like, hey, well, as long as you're on my team, then I guess it's okay that you're just roughhousing. But if you're on the other team, then that's cheating.
Yeah, you can't mess with Michael, man.
No, no, and the funny thing is Michael doesn't need Dennis Rodman to protect him. Michael was Michael, and everyone was intimidated by him. When you see all of the interviews of all the other team, you can see that they were all like, "Oh no, I'm going against Michael Jordan." And there's only one or two that really wasn't like, "Oh yeah, Michael Jordan." Isaiah Thomas was one of them, but apparently Michael and Isaiah Thomas had a little issue in the first
They
place.
have a good relationship, yeah.
And I'm watching Isaiah Thomas's clips and stuff, and I'm thinking, well, I mean, you're great, man, but the fact that you think that like Michael Jordan is the Beatles and you are the Who, and the Who
Yeah,
is
seriously.
the Who's a decent band. We like the Who,
Yeah.
but they're not the Beatles. So,
Yeah,
and when you
me
hear
too.
someone comparing them, you're like, okay, are you from planet Earth or are you?
Seriously. You're from aliens.
Oh, but yeah, like almost, I'd say about what, 8 hours of this entertainment. And I remember after watching the first one being completely in awe. And it's almost giving credit to Michael Jordan for being kind of an oddity. He eats, drinks, sleeps basketball, and if someone's not doing it, he gets pissed off at him.
Yeah,
And
he's
that's how his whole world revolves. And you'd see him tear up a lot in the documentary because you'd see that he was just so like hurt. He was just so offended and dishonored, and this is a guy who would try to keep his cool, but the moment he'd go to his locker room, he would just break down, and you're thinking like, I don't know if a lot of it's the pressure. Well, not for Michael Jordan. Apparently, he's one of those people that like all these announcers and stuff kept on saying, "Oh no, Michael Jordan wasn't one of those people that ever really felt the pressure. Like when the pressure was brought on is whenever he, rised above it." And most,
Give the ball in Michael's hands and there's 2 seconds left.
I know. There's that part whenever Steve Kerr has that video whenever he goes, "All right, guys, so we all know that when Michael's freaking out, he throws the ball to me and I take care of the shots and stuff."
Ah,
And then everyone's just laughing because they know that obviously Michael's the man, and Steve Kerr was just being funny.
Told Michael, he said, Michael, I want you to take the last shot. And Michael said, Phil, I don't feel real comfortable in these situations. So maybe we ought to go in another direction. Why don't we go to Steve?
But that time at the end of the last game, whenever Michael Jordan throws it to Steve Kerr, not last game, but what was it, 1996 or 5, whatnot. I don't. But he throws it to Steve Kerr to win the championship. And it was unlike him because typically Michael
Yeah.
Jordan's going to take it.
Yeah, he's gonna take it every time.
Right, and it's not even for like selfish reasons. It's because he now has a job to do. And the cool thing about him too is we all know about basketball players. A lot of them are ball hogs and showboats and stuff. Michael Jordan, even though he looked like he was literally walking in the air when he would do his jumps. He was also known for being a wonderful passer and just a quality teammate. And he would do anything he could to win the game. And that's one of those things. And to put a lot of pressure on one person to do that, and then that person going, yeah, throw it all my way, and I'll take it and I'll enjoy it. It's because most of us, they make these underdog stories about these characters who were like nervous and who are like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, and who rose above all this stuff. But Michael, this whole time, has just been
Yeah.
like, he's just been godly, just like, oh, I don't even know what to do about you because you've always been like perfect basketball player. Even whenever
Yeah.
that whole game, whenever he has the flu and he's throwing up from the food poisoning from the pizza, I think it was, and
Yeah. The pizza, yeah.
and he's like, you can see his skin is a different color. He is like a
Yeah.
whitish color, and yet he still goes out there and just
I'll fight
destroys it.
through it.
Yeah.
Dude, I couldn't imagine doing that.
And Tayson, you actually play basketball all the time. I see you always on the court shooting whenever I go drive by the house and whatnot. And I know you're really good, and of course you're good at a lot of sports. I actually played basketball 1 year. I was awful. I only played because the man, the myth, the legend, William Hamner Du Bois Jr. told me if I if I played basketball, he would have to wrestle. And of course, we both sucked at the other thing. But
Yeah.
you're good at that. So, first of all, have you been able to walk through the air like Michael Jordan has yet?
Not yet, but I've been able to touch like midway through the net on a 10-foot rim, so
Ooh.
getting there.
How tall are you now?
I'm like 5'4", I think.
5'4". Okay, I made you a little bit shorter than me in the picture, but then I realized that how tall you guys get. Maybe you grew 4 inches in the last 3 days, so I was a little nervous about that.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
So I filmed. You were young me, and of course everyone just saw this, but you were young me shooting, and it was just a quick little thing that you and I did, where it was like I was trying to do like a Space Jam thing, where you're shooting and missing every single shot. He was making every single shot, of course, but I wanted you to miss it, being me, because I would miss him in real life, and I'm gonna having like the whole, so many years later, and then you see me and I'm still not a good basketball player. And I thought,
Yeah.
it's a little different because in the movie Space Jam, Michael Jordan is awesome. And I remember his dad comes out and was like, hey, you need to go ahead and come back inside, son. He goes, oh, just one more shot. And I remember thinking like, well, he probably was like that, where he would probably go in the middle of the night and just go shoot hoops because he's Michael Jordan. But
Yeah, he was insane.
But yeah, it was pretty cool watching this documentary because growing up in the '90s, I remember seeing all these players that he was going against, all the John Stocktons and Larry Birds and Magic Johnsons. I remember watching, not necessarily the Magic Johnson, I was too young for that, but I remember watching like the John Stocktons and the Kobe Bryant's, but that was way later. But I remember, the Penny Hardaways and the Shaquille O'Neals. These guys were all at the top of their game whenever I was 13 years old. So it was the coolest time to be a basketball fan because it was the coolest players of all time playing at that
The
exact
90s
moment.
was good. Yeah.
So watching the documentary now, I'm seeing all these players, and I'm Reggie Miller and all these guys. I'm going, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. And you're seeing them play the game, and then you see the person talking about the game and how it made them feel, and oh, Michael Jordan, that piece of shit, and you're like, oh jeez, okay, well, oh wow, he just said that, and then then all of a sudden it scrolls down and you see Michael Jordan's watching them call him that, and he's just like, oh yeah, you wouldn't get to my face.
He's on the iPad, yeah.
And I remember thinking
It's
like,
very funny. I was like, yeah. Yeah, that was the funny part.
I know but the whole time you could tell he was probably getting so frustrated about what he was seeing. He had a smile on his face, and you can tell he's kind of gritting his teeth because still to this day he cannot let it go. And I believe it was Charles Barkley who even said, I cannot be friends with Michael Jordan to this day because he still has that whole competitive nature, and I'm just a old fart who's just trying to enjoy retirement kind of thing, and he's sitting there like still taking it seriously.
Taking it personal after all these years.
Oh. But
It was fun though.
there are many elements to this documentary that are awesome. One thing that of course, I've heard his name millions of times before, but I had no idea how amazing he was Scottie Pippen. And a lot of people will say, when it comes to things like assist and whatnot, Scottie Pippen. I mean, Michael Jordan, to this day, you'll see an interview to this day, and he'll say, "Nope, Scottie Pippen, no one else,
And he
Scottie
was my
Pippen."
man to pass the ball to. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Scottie Pippen would make things happen, and he was pretty much because Michael Jordan, and luckily Michael Jordan would bring the credit where the credit was due. He would say, "No, Scottie was always there, and he always would get me that ball."
Yeah.
And it was a back and forth between us. And then you started changing dynamics. Dennis Rodman doing his Dennis Rodman thing, being awesome at rebounds and also punching people and such with his awesome colored hair and
Yeah.
stuff. Every single one.
Every episode he had a different color hair. It was awesome.
And his story, his little flamboyant journey, like how they lost him because he went to Vegas and was hanging out with Carmen Electra, and then another time they lost him because he was getting married, but he was in the bride. He was dressed as the bride.
Yeah, it was watching it. It was cringy.
Yeah, it was cringy. Well, I mean, it Dennis Rodman, so it wasn't as cringy for me. But I think if most other people would try that, it would be cringy. But it was cringy. But the funniest thing I thought with him was whenever he actually was doing the wrestling, and Hulk Hogan was sitting there going, "Listen, brother, is it true that you should
Yeah,
be
he tried wrestling. Yeah.
I know it's like you should be at practice right now, but you're here with us." And he's like, "Yep." And and then when you see like Michael Jordan talking about like that experience, because just seeing that itself, seeing Hulk Hogan, and Dennis Rodman do the thing, it's just funny. But then when you actually see Michael Jordan talking about that, and then Phil Jackson, awesome head coach, talking about that, it's like, that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, his little vacations, if you will, were hilarious. I love those.
Oh yes, and funny thing, Michael Jordan, that wasn't his style at all. He wouldn't. I mean, the only
No,
time he
not
pretty much did that was whenever his father passed away, and then of course that's whenever he quit basketball for what was it 2 years I believe to play baseball, and the funny thing is, a Space Jam, the movie was showing him as a really awful baseball player, but the way that the documentary was talking about him playing baseball is he was awful for a while, and then he started getting really good. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's Michael Jordan. He could probably go play soccer in
Yeah,
two weeks. He's
anything.
better than Pele. So
Yeah.
oh man, and Phil Jackson, to deal with all these kind of different kind of personalities, the way that he talks about Dennis Rodman, the way that a lot of people would say, oh, Phil Jackson back in the day was like Dennis Rodman. He was kind of a crazy one, and
Very tall and scrawny.
yes, yes, and it's just like Tayson. It's crazy that you see this group of guys, and maybe it's like this for all basketball teams. I'm not sure, but you see this group of guys, and it shows their story so well that it's like they were all brothers in this crazy attack, and then they get defeated every once in a while in this battle. They'd win a battle, but every single time, everyone else is kind of like, okay, cool, that's too bad, we'll get him next time. But Michael Jordan's in there in the corner going, you just see the rage, and then as they're all walking away, he goes, "Where are you going? Come back. We're not done playing yet. 5 hours of practice." And even like Phil Jackson's like, "Oh no, that's fine, it's fine." And then Michael Jordan's like, "What was that, head coach?" No, yeah. You're right, Michael. Get back in there, guys.
Back out. That was insane.
Oh, it's Phil Jackson's awesome. Now, and speaking of, so this guy right here, a lot of people say he was the best at his job, and a lot of people said that he was the worst at his job. I am talking, of course, of Jerry Krause, the short little guy that kind of is what caused this whole documentary called The Last Dance in the first place. Because what he did, first of all, he got all these guys together, and it was kind of against the grain. A lot of people were like, "Ooh, you're gonna bring Dennis Rodman, and you're gonna trade these certain guys that are excellent for someone like Dennis
Yeah, he
Rodman."
got a lot of hate of that.
Yes, he did. And then, of course, they start winning all these championships, and it's because he made these decisions. But it's called Last Dance because he started alienating everyone from the team, and including the head coach, and I guess especially head
Yeah.
coach and especially Scottie Pippen. But everyone talked. Everyone say, hey, he is damn good at his job, but hey, we don't like him.
Yeah. I don't know what was wrong with him. Like felt like a cool guy, like, couple beers, but
Mhm.
like I don't know.
I think he probably had little man syndrome.
Yeah, that's what they said in the thing. Yeah.
And well, of course, you have all these giants of men that would even, trump over you and I. They're trumping over a guy who's 5'4", your height. From what I heard, I guess he was alienating everyone, including Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson. I guess they were the worst.
Yeah.
How they kept on trying to trade Scottie Pippen like silently, and I guess he was also one of the most talented basketball players, but one of the least paid. He was like the top like
Yeah, he was like
80 or something
yeah,
like that.
he was insane. Watching that, it was it was just weird.
And they were back and forth on that. I guess the problem was he was told to sign it for like 7 million
Mhm.
for like a 7 year contract, and it was fine at the time. But then all of a sudden they started winning all this stuff, and
Mhm.
he never changed it, and then he just started getting kind of pissed off and kind of was a little irritating for a minute because he was kind of being a baby about it.
Yeah.
And so that whole thing that happened with Jerry Krause, that alone, I thought, no, I don't think Jerry's really wrong in that. But I get why
Yeah.
Scotty was frustrated because Scotty was awesome and wasn't getting paid like even a fraction of what all these other people were getting paid. So
Yeah.
he was a little frustrated about that. But and then of course Jerry Krause's whole situation with Phil Jackson, he was trying to get his buddy to be the head coach, and I guess he hired, and I guess he was getting married, and he invited everyone to his wedding except Phil Jackson, and so it was just
Yeah,
kind
that was
of, yeah, it was just
yeah,
kind
that
of
was
weird, like
yeah.
oh wow man, why would you do that? Even if you don't like him, you don't do that because it looks bad for the team and everything.
Yeah.
But when he did that, it was all these people started talking after that. Of course, it started a whole thing, and then he said, "Oh, by the way, this is all your last year, and then we're going to pretty much
Rebuild the entire team.
rebuild." Which typically that's not a bad idea, but it's one of those things. If it's not broke, don't fix it. When you're
Yeah.
seriously, and then Jerry Krause even made the comment saying, "I don't care if you go undefeated this
Yeah,
year."
82-0, yeah, or whatever how many games. Yeah.
And that sounds, no matter how you slice it, Taysom, that sounds like someone who's just pissed off that
Same.
people are probably saying, "Oh, little man, oh, you're, what a loser," and he probably was just, getting that whole little man syndrome where he's like, "Okay, I'll show you how little I am. Watch this," and in doing so, first of all, not only are you getting rid of like Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and all these kind of things, you're getting rid of Michael Jordan. I mean, that
Yeah,
that makes
that
literally
makes no
no
sense.
sense. Yeah, no sense at all. And let's get rid of the best basketball player
Yeah.
of all time in his prime. Let's get rid of him because of some petty thing. And I guess the owner was all for Jerry Krause, and to this day will stick up for Jerry Krause, and pretty much everyone else will be like, no, Jerry Krause was a piece of crap, but he was good at his job most of the time.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, yeah, maybe you can say most time because what he accomplished with the Bulls in the first place was beautiful. And he came from a place, he used to work in the professional baseball league, so he came from a place where stats actually mattered. You saw that, I forget what it's called, but that Oakland A's movie with Brad Pitt, Moneyball.
Moneyball.
Money,
Yeah, that was a really good movie
it was a really
actually.
good movie, and I guess they found the whole niche in stats don't lie, so let's try that. And it was purely based off of like how good these stats were, and they actually like, I think they won the whole thing that year. It was,
Yeah.
and
So they lost it or something to like it went in game 7 to the I don't know baseball, but yeah.
Oh no, but still, I mean, get the second best team in the whole league. That's very impressive just from
That was a very good
going
move.
from a move that no one's ever tried because it sounds really stupid. And I forget who was saying this the other day, but they say that baseball players, it's stats and stuff like that. Football players, it's the coaches, and basketball players, it's the players. Now,
Yep.
I don't know if there's any truth to that, but it sounded
Yeah.
interesting. I thought,
Oh
well,
yeah.
okay, cool. But and that was another thing too. You hear Jerry Krause just constantly just kind of slamming the team and whatnot, and you're thinking, well, why you kind of saying these things that are kind of contradicting the fact that you're their general manager. You're almost
Yeah.
like they're your kids and they misbehaved. Now you're punishing them or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting.
So watching the whole documentary, Tayson? Who would you say? I mean, besides Michael Jordan, because it was Michael Jordan. Who would you say every time they came on, you're like, oh, cool! I can't wait to hear more about this person.
Honestly, I thought it was the little things, like BJ's background. They didn't show much of Dennis' background as much as I wanted to, but yeah, BJ, their center, I forgot his name, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. But those guys I kind of wanted to hear more about.
And Dennis Rodman, sadly, the only time they were pretty much talking about him was when he was doing something
Yeah,
very
when he was
odd.
doing something very bad. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but and Scottie Pippen, I love his story because, I mean, you see a big old tall brute and you're thinking, oh my gosh, you don't want to mess with him, but you find out that he's very shy and he's very like sweet and very like soft spoken,
Yeah.
and it's very cute. And then I can just see like the dynamic. You see the dynamic like with him and Michael, and it's almost like it's like a bro thing. They're like,
Yeah. That
and
was
that,
very cool.
it was very cool, and to this day, like when you tell the best, Michael Jordan, hey, who is and I'm not sure, I forget. I think was he a small forward? I'm not sure what Scottie Pippen's
Oh, he was a power forward, I
power
think.
forward. Thank you. Uh, Power forward, and you talk to Michael Jordan, like who's your favorite power forward, and you go, well, Scottie Pippen,
Yeah.
and
Scottie Pippen,
you're
obviously.
thinking like because a lot of people like, and it's funny. I was looking at the cost of cards, and
Oh, those are.
Scottie Pippen's cards are not very expensive. And it's funny because it's like the world had no idea how talented he really was. And this documentary kind of showed how talented he was. And he was always, he's on the dream team always. He was always great, but I don't think people like gave him that as much credit to him until you saw this documentary and you're like, oh, even though Michael
He has
Jordan,
way more
yeah,
credit,
oh, he
yeah.
does, yeah. And Michael Jordan was awesome. Don't get me wrong, but you see a lot of the reason why Michael Jordan was awesome was because these people around him, and even Michael Jordan. The cool thing about him, yeah, he's cocky. He's a very confident person. If you ever listen to his Hall of Fame speech, it's very, I don't know, it's kind of a little like pretentious, I thought, but I also saw that before I saw the Last Dance, and you see Last Dance, and even his Hall of Fame speech, it makes more sense because you're like, okay, to a normal person, like not knowing, just knowing that Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan,
Mhm.
what a pompous piece of crap he is. But then when you watch Last Dance, you realize he's not necessarily pompous. He's just this is all he does. He's
Yeah.
basketball, and it's kind of sad when you think about it because he didn't really have really anything else like. And then he was the most popular man in the whole world for so many years, and he had to deal with that. And it shows like the pressures of him have to deal with that. And then you know, and then there was so many interviews when people would say,
Oh, the interviews would stress me out.
I know exactly. They're
With that, yeah.
explain, and you could just see Michael was just defeated a lot, and it was kind of heartbreaking because you're like, oh man,
Yeah, some of the episodes they look very sad.
yes, it doesn't have like a happy like, oh, Michael Jordan, our hero. It has more like a, oh man, I don't want to be Michael Jordan. I want to,
Yeah.
he's probably like crying right now.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, but I got to watch him on TV as he was performing these godly feats. I remember the whole airtime and what he did for Nike shoes, what he did for advertising, period, what he did for pop culture, period. This is not just about this documentary Last Dance. This is about what Michael Jordan has done for the world, how he is literally chipped a piece of himself in it. So now, no matter what, there'd be some kind of reference to Michael Jordan, a Michael Jordan-ism that is like, oh yeah, like, oh let's go play some Michael Jordan's sport, and that's like, oh, let's go play
Yeah.
basketball. It's always gonna be something. Hey, every time the new Air Jordans come out, we have to get it. And you'd hear all these.
Those things are so big.
I know, and I don't personally like them because I'm not necessarily
Yeah.
a basketball shoe fan, but the fact that he was able to do all that with the shoes, whenever it was talking about how people were kind of going like ooh, Michael Jordan hasn't really proved himself yet, but we're still going to give him the Air Jordans. It was like I think it was like 1984, 85, something like that. And then all of a sudden he starts just killing it and becoming the most popular basketball player. And then Nike, like, who took a big chance on him when he was, just a guy from
He
North
didn't
Carolina.
he wanted like Adidas or something like that. He didn't even want Nike.
I know well, of course, and of course he was it Nike or Reebok that he did not want to.
Oh, he covered up the logo on, yeah, it was Reebok, yeah.
And that's kind of guy this guy was. He was all for like, oh, no, I'm doing Nike. I'm not going to do this. And since Reebok was sponsoring the whole thing, he kind of had to. So when he said that he found that little clever idea to cover the flag over the Reebok sign, you're thinking, well, no one's going to tell him not to do that because that's the
Yeah.
United States flag. So and it was genius. And there's nothing more beautiful and powerful than seeing the best athlete of all time wearing the USA flag. There's nothing more empowering than that.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and of course, people ate it up. They made posters and all these things of it, and it was like this most amazing thing, all because he was just trying to be respectful to Nike and be a little too proud, and
Yeah,
that was Michael
seriously.
Jordan for you.
Yes, seriously.
And another thing I really liked about him too, which he got a lot of slack for in the actual documentary, but what I liked about him was how he stood like the whole politics thing where that one guy was trying to run for mayor, and he asked Michael Jordan
Oh, and
to
like North
endorse him.
Carolina, I think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he said no, and then his answer, which pissed a lot of people off, was Republicans buy my shoes too. And even though it sounds kind of like a snarky thing to say, what he was really saying is I'm not gonna alienate half of my fans, and
Yeah.
that is the most beautiful thing you can say. And of course, these days, a lot of celebrities don't care about that. They'll
Oh.
they'll
No,
get out
they'll
and
come out
say,
right away.
if
Yeah.
you believe in this way, then I don't like you. And you're like, oh, geez, okay. But Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
knowing he was the most watched, most beloved person in the whole world, is putting underneath these kind of the spotlight, and he says what he feels is right, and knowing that he's going to get destroyed because
Yeah.
all this crap saying, oh, so, and of course the mayor who was trying to get him to endorse him was a African American himself, and so they were trying to say like, well, Michael, why would you not do that? You being African American yourself, and his answer was like, because first of all, that has nothing to do with it,
Yeah.
and second of all, you know, I'm not gonna pretty much flip off half of my fans. That's not cool.
Yeah. I respect it when people do that.
Yeah, and especially like you and I can do it. And it's still very it's special because it's what makes us better humans later on. It's a very big deal. But when you have so much pressure and so much media constantly looking at you, and if you say one word that is not okay, they're gonna destroy it. And he did that. That was one of those things where all the other things that he did that I did not appreciate or approve of necessarily. I remember thinking, well, I mean, dang man, that was cool. That was cool.
Yes, that was yeah.
So Taysom, what would you say out of the whole thing was your favorite was your favorite moment, or what was your favorite? Every time something would happen, you're like, oh, here it comes. Oh, I hope they do this again. What was your favorite thing on it?
I liked when he was shooting the game winners. Obviously, that felt cool. Just like mic'd up when they're mic'd up and just talking like on the floor. I like that a lot. And then Michael Jordan just hustling every play. That was I don't know. It was insane to watch.
And the crazy thing about that is when you hear all these people talking about Michael, I mean, there's one quote that I really love. They said, "Yeah, with Michael, there was no on and off button. It was always on." And
Yeah.
he repeated stuff. It was always on, and then it showed, you
True.
know, and right after he said
Yeah.
on, and all of a sudden you see Michael Jordan just slam dunking it, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, doing
Doing
that
the
thing that he was
montage
doing with his
before,
tongue
yeah.
out. Oh, I know. And whoever, I tell you what, the directing was really good, but whoever put the clips together and then arranged it to how it was going to kind of go back and forth between 1984 to 1998, back to 1984, back to 97, and
That
it
was really cool. I like that too.
oh, and I don't know. Maybe they did. I probably should have looked it up. And maybe I wonder if they got any kind of awards for this because it definitely deserved. I mean, I'm sure it got some kind of
As well.
best documentary or whatnot. But I'm talking about for like editing and whatnot because this is hours and hours and
Yeah,
hours.
every game of each season. Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
And then they had to follow every single one of Michael Jordan's games, and if something important happened there that caused like, oh, that's when Michael Jordan got in a fight with Reggie Miller, so we got to really pay attention to this. We got to cut any type
Yeah.
we saw like Reggie Miller flip off Michael or Reggie Miller bump into Michael. We have to find those clips, and I'm
Those
thinking
articles.
the tedious task of that. I hope that people that put that together are now millionaires.
Yeah, the directing was really good. I liked it a lot, yeah. Also, Nick, what I loved is, or, didn't like as much as I, wanted it to, they didn't extend the story as much as I thought it would, because I thought the 10th would have been like uh, the story, like what they did after their lives, but it was just their rings and stuff.
Yeah, it was. I think out of all the episodes, funny enough, because usually in any season of anything, it's like the first episode and the last episode are always the craziest because
Yeah.
they have to introduce the topic and then they have to give the topic
Like, people out, yeah.
resolution or yeah, closure. And this was kind of just almost rehashing everything that we already heard a couple of times. So I definitely agree with you. I think that they kind of not like they blew their opportunity because I mean obviously it was even the last episode. If I watched just the last episode by itself, I would have been in awe of the whole.
Oh, yeah.
But it did kind of just and maybe it was smart to do that because when you start watching it, you get at
And
first
the
you get
rest of
this
my
whole
story wasn't good, yeah.
yeah, because when you first start watching it, you're thinking kind of Michael Jordan's just very talented person, but
Mhm.
kind of a piece of crap at times. And then as you in the middle of that first episode or by the end of it, you're already going, oh, I kind of get it now. Michael Jordan was a god.
Yes, it's pretty cool.
And he was so talented that it came at a cost, and you saw that cost, like how just his life was kind of at times all over the place because of this. Now, and then sadly with the death of his dad too, that really turned him to a spiral. And I remember he for a while was kind of all over the place, which
Yeah, I
I
remember
get
one of the
that.
games we were like 45 for the first couple. Can't remember if it playoffs or not, but like first couple games, what he wore 45 or something, and then he just switched because he wasn't having good games in the.
Yes, and not only that, but what a weird thing to see Michael Jackson. That'd be a weird thing to see Michael Jackson playing basketball too. What a thing to see because 23. When you think of the 23, you don't think of anyone else in history in basketball, and that's only because Michael Jordan has taken that number. So when I saw that he had the 40, was it 45? You said?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
45.
try to get that out of my memory because it hurt my heart. But when I
Yeah,
when I saw it, I'm thinking like, oh, that's not his number. Take it off,
yeah.
poser, poser. And you're right. It's like he took it off, and
When
then
his
all
dad scared him,
yeah, and it made sense. And
yeah.
and that was another thing that was kind of sad is they kind of were implying that his gambling problem might have caused his dad to be killed.
I didn't think so.
I mean, if that,
Yeah.
I hope it has nothing to do with it, and I hope
It didn't
that
really tell much.
what's
They
that?
just said it didn't really tell much. It just on the news when it said his dad died, it just said Michael Jordan's dad died of maybe addiction to gambling or something.
Yeah, and I looked it up a little bit more, Tayson, and found out that a lot of people think that it was connected, but I guess he didn't pay his dues on time or whatnot, and they killed his dad for it. But I hope that's not the case, because from what it sounded like, Michael and his dad had such a great relationship, and it's just a shame that that would possibly put out there, even though it might completely be false. So, yeah. Oh well, my friend, I love talking with this.
It was amazing. I loved it. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, of course, buddy, of course. I love talking about this, and we need to talk right afterwards about what we want to do next. We have some time. We can come up with a good
Perfect,
one
yeah.
and whatnot. Maybe do something getting away from sports. And I said the only reason why I wanted to do this one, because even though I don't have a problem with sports, but the only reason why I want to do this one is because it really was master editing and filmmaking, and then of course they did such a good job showing how Michael Jordan truly was
that was
beyond
the best.
basketball.
The documentary was insane.
So yeah, thank you, Tayson, for doing this with me, buddy. I appreciate it, and we'll do one real soon, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, buddy. Love you, my friend. I
you.
love all you guys. Hey, the Nerd Frenzy Podcast at gmail.com, guys. Write a little topic starter. Whatever you guys want to do, I will do it all. I've actually done certain topics based primarily off of what you guys have sent me. So it happens all the time, unless I want to do something special with my love, Tayson.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. You guys take care. Have a good night.
Bye, guys.
The Nerd Frenzy Podcast.